Donald Trump, the former president, has been found guilty of fraud, according to a new ruling in a civil case brought forward by New York's Attorney General Letitia James. Now, this particular civil suit isn't over yet. However, the future proceedings will be far easier considering the ruling that the judge has handed down in regard to the fraud accusations. Now, Judge Arthur Engoron, ruling Tuesday in a civil lawsuit, found that the former president and his company deceived banks, insurers, and others by massively overvaluing his assets and exaggerating his net worth on paperwork used in making deals and securing financing. In fact, according to AG Letitia James, Trump has overvalued his properties by as much as $2.2 billion. Now, it's interesting to finally get to a point where a judge has weighed in on this. But years ago, we had first gotten word from Trump's one-time personal attorney, Michael Cohen, about this very type of scam. And here was that moment as he was speaking to Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez under oath.
I want to ask a little bit about your conversation with my colleague from Missouri about asset inflation. To your knowledge, did the president ever provide inflated assets to an insurance company?
Yes.
Who else knows that the president did this?
Alan Weisselberg, Ron Lieberman, and Matthew Calamari.
And where would the committee find more information on this? Do you think we need to review his financial statements and his tax returns in order to compare them?
Yes, and you'd find it at the Trump org.
That Calamari. Now, okay, so Cohen testified under oath, investigations were launched, and we come to the day today where we hear from this federal judge. Now, beyond mere bragging about his riches, Trump, his company, and key executives repeatedly lied about them on his annual financial statements, reaping rewards such as favorable loan terms and lower insurance premiums, according to the judge, okay? So easiest way to explain this is he would inflate the value of his assets in order to secure the insurance, or in some cases loans, or he would devalue his assets in order to dodge taxes. The lawsuit, which also names two of Donald Trump's adult sons, Don Jr. and Eric Trump, and his company as defendants, seeks a fine of $250 million and to sever the Trump family from leading the Trump organization. Trump claimed that a disclaimer on his financial statements absolved him of any wrongdoing. Clearly, the judge didn't buy that argument. Trump's lawyers also had asked the judge to throw out the case, which they then denied, right? And the judge denied it. His lawyers say that James wasn't legally allowed to file the lawsuit because there isn't any evidence that the public was harmed by Trump's actions. Judge didn't buy it. They also argued that many of the allegations in the lawsuit were barred by statute of limitations. Judge didn't buy that as well. The judge also ordered sanctions against Trump's lawyers for making arguments that he previously rejected. He ordered each to pay $7,500 as a result. And in the judge's ruling, in a phase that is known as a summary judgment, it basically resolves the key claims in James's lawsuit, but there are 6 other claims. So this suit will move forward. So Engoron, who's the judge, is slated to hold a non-jury trial starting on October 2nd before deciding on those claims and any punishments he may impose. James is seeking, again, $250 million in penalties and a ban on Trump doing business in New York, his home state. The trial could last into December. But there is a caveat here because according to the New York Times, Donald Trump still has an opportunity to delay the trial or even gut the case against him. Trump has already sued Justice Engoron, and an appeals court is expected to rule this week on his lawsuit. But if the appeals court rules against him, Trump will have to fight the remainder of the case at trial. So keep in mind, this is the civil suit. This is not a criminal prosecution. And there was a possibility that Alvin Bragg in New York was going to pursue a criminal case against him with the same allegations, but instead he decided to prosecute Trump over the hush money payments. Cenk, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so I'm gonna get to the timing in a second, why now? But first, let's address a couple of things. So is this a serious case? Of course it is. So for example, guys, if you were going to get a loan and you said you have $2 billion in collateral, but in reality you had 20 bucks, Would that be fraud? Of course. And if they give you like a $200 million loan because they think you have $2 billion collateral, that's a massive amount of fraud, and you're going to be in a lot of trouble if you do it anywhere. I mean, if you did 1% of that, you'd be in massive trouble, right? And on insurance, say a very similar situation. If you say, let's give you a really general, broad example. Hey, my building is worth $2 billion. Oh, something happened to my building. In reality, it was worth $20 million. And then you go to collect, you could give me the $2 billion. Well, then you're just stealing $2 billion, right? So now, like whether that insurance event actually happened, whether they needed the collateral is a different issue. But the fact that you're misstating your assets is definitely, I mean, it's a crime, let alone the fact that it's definitely fraud, both in civil and criminal context. They're just choosing not to pursue the criminal one, they're pursuing the civil one. Now, well, what happened in this particular situation here? Why does it sound like he lost, but the case is not yet over, right? So this is called summary judgment. And so normally summary judgment is very plain, and there's something a little bit unusual here because summary judgment is usually, do they have a legal basis for this case or not, no matter what the facts are. Because if you bring a case where you say, oh, the facts are X, Y, Z, and there's a giant disagreement about the facts, but it doesn't really matter because you didn't break the law, there was no fraud in the first place, then the judge rules on summary judgment, case is dismissed. Even if you proved all the facts right, it still wouldn't be illegal or wrong, right? In this case, the judge has now definitively ruled, no, if you prove the facts in this case, it's definitely wrong. It is illegal, it's wrong, it's a violation, it's fraud, right? So all of Trump's motions on summary judgment are dismissed. So the case definitely goes forward. And then interestingly, which is something I haven't seen that often, the judge did a summary judgment in favor of the prosecution where they said, yes, this is fraud. Look, I don't know if you'd have to really dive into the details of the case to get this. But one thing that we've always been saying is partly based on that Michael Cohen testimony that you saw there, partly based on logic. The numbers have to be written in stone because you're reporting one number for your assets to insurance and loans to get loans, and you're reporting a completely different number on the same assets for taxes.
Because tax,
because to the IRS you want to report very low value so you don't pay that much in taxes. To the guys you're trying to get a loan from, you want to report very high values so you can get as big a loan as possible. They're in stone, they're already in writing, in forms submitted to the government from years ago, right? So it looks like the judge did some version of, there's no question about it at all. This is definitely fraud, but there are still things to adjudicate. What level of fraud, what kind of fraud, what should be the number for how much he should pay. We haven't gotten to damages yet. There's still the heart of the trial that still has to happen to determine what kind of fraud and what kind of liability there is here. But in this round, it's a big loss for Trump. So his case in terms of his defense is shredded. In fact, and this is another thing I almost never see except in Trump cases, the judge sanctioned the lawyers and fined them $7,500 because they kept submitting their defense that the judge had already invalidated. He said, look guys, I'm trying to help you. That defense makes no sense. So come up with another defense. I'm giving you another opportunity, okay? And then submit it. And they just come back with the same defense.
He's like, all right, you guys are just annoying me now, so I'm gonna fine you $7,500 each.
Yeah, he's like, I'm trying to help you. That defense is not close to valid. Come up with another one. And they're like, nope. Because they don't have a defense. It's written in stone. It's handed in to the government, 2 different documents, right? With different numbers from the same assets. I know in the MAGA world, 2 different numbers from the same assets make sense. Okay, brothers and sisters, whatever you want. I know you want to deny reality.
I think you should be fair to MAGA world. I think you're being unfair to MAGA world. As we've learned through the Hunter Biden prosecution, Republican voters, Trump supporters care deeply about any individual, regardless of their proximity to power or their position of power, lying on any government form and just deceiving the government. In the case of Hunter Biden, he was on crack cocaine when he decided to purchase a gun. He lied on the background check form when he applied to obtain that firearm. So obviously, I would be shocked if Republican voters were somehow providing cover for Trump for lying, committing fraud, especially on government forms, when on the other hand, they're furious about what Hunter Biden did.
No, that's a brilliant point.
Yeah.
I mean, MAGA, you tell me, is lying on a government form important or not important? Or do you want to just say, well, we like it when Trump lies, but we don't like it when Hunter does it? Okay, try to stay principled. So, and also I'm sure the MAGA defense isn't going to be that it's, I'm sure for some of them, they'll say numbers don't mean anything, numbers aren't actually numbers. But a lot of them will probably say like, what's the big deal? Of course you lie to the government. Of course you cheat to try to make more money. That's a smart thing to do. That's what all businessmen do. And there's actually a little bit of a kernel of truth to that. So I'm gonna get to that in 1 second. But one last hilarious part of this case. The Trump suing the judge.
Yeah.
What is that? I've never seen that in my life. That's such a Trump move. You can't try my case. I don't like your rulings against me. You can't try me. You're biased. So I'm going to sue you for being biased.
Oh yeah? You're coming for me, I'm coming for you.
Yeah. That's not gonna work. You can't just sue the judge that's assigned to your case and get him out of the case.
I give him credit for trying.
Yeah, that's at least innovative.
It's different.
Yeah, it's because when you have no evidence on your side, you got to try innovative legal strategies.
True.
Okay, now what's the kernel there? And it gets us back to the timing. Guys, for the MAGA world, I get it, guys. What you say is, don't all businessmen do this? First of all, the answer is no. I'm in the business community. No way all businessmen do this. But do some businessmen do this? Yes, okay. Do most of them get prosecuted? No. Do some of them get prosecuted? Yes. Okay, in fact, there was a pretty high profile case in our industry, in digital media. Ozzy was the company, and they actually went to go prosecute them for fraud, okay? So it does happen. But guys, what you're missing is, did they let Trump skate on this like they let all the elites skate on it for years and years and years? Yes, not because like he's being specially persecuted now. It's because he is among the elites. He was part of the establishment. That's why they didn't bother prosecuting him on over the top outrageous fraud.
Yeah.
But now the establishment doesn't like him and they're like, okay, all right. This is a big weird thing, but we're gonna prosecute one of our own.
That's true. That's such a great way of putting it because that's exactly right. I mean, Donald Trump has been engaging in all sorts of financial fraud for a long time, and that's based on testimony from his former close confidants, former personal lawyers, reporting that looked into his tax returns, reporting that looked into the various ways in which Trump and his father in particular worked together to dodge the taxes that they were supposed to pay. I'm not talking about, using the tax laws in a super clever way to legally skirt having to pay your taxes. I'm talking about creating like weird shell companies and falsifying documents just to dodge the taxes that they're supposed to pay. And look, to me, it's an issue of fairness, right? It really is. Because had any normal, working class individual lied in their taxes or lied to obtain insurance and loans, if they had committed fraud, they would get prosecuted. And you wouldn't have a very pricey defense team looking out for you. Very likely, most people would have to rely on, a defense attorney because it would be a criminal prosecution in most cases.
Last thing is, look, a lot of Republicans run
public defender, sorry.
Run small businesses, mid-sized businesses. That's part of why they're Republican. They don't like paying taxes. They don't like the regulation, et cetera. So guys, if you're on a small business or mid-sized business, you're the most likely to get targeted for this stuff. You commit a little bit of fraud, which you shouldn't. That's why they'll come after you with guns blazing, right? Mm-hmm. At the very highest levels, it barely ever gets prosecuted. So if you're saying, oh, no, you should come after my business if I make a slight mistake, but you should let so-called billionaires like Donald Trump skate because they're so rich they get to cheat. That is a very ironic message to have for a populist. So get back to actual populism and be anti-establishment all you want. I'm in favor of that, even though we might not agree on the different policies. But backing a guy who's committed fraud his whole life and gotten away with it is pretty ironic, and that's not what you're supposed to stand for. But hey, up to you. If you think, yes, he cheated, I love that he cheated. Okay, have at it, Hoss.
Hey, thanks for watching that video. We really appreciate it, guys. And we appreciate it if you become members because that allows us to be independent, honest, progressive, all the things that you don't get from corporate media. And all of that is because of you guys. Hit the join button below and become one of us, become a Young Turk.